Welcome to Mr. Burley Teaches, a series of lectures for the AP Environmental Science classroom. Today's topic is population. This will be part 1 of 3. Okay, so hopefully you're ready to go, strapped in, and excited to learn about population study. And we're going to start off by talking about humans, and then we're going to take these concepts and apply them later into a unit on biodiversity and wildlife. And in talking about population, I like this picture to start here. And I'm going to ask you in a few moments to respond to the question, do you think the world is overpopulated? And I just want to start by saying, when we talk about overpopulation, we're not talking about space. And a lot of people just go right there. They think about space. There's enough space on Earth for people. If you take all 7 billion people on the planet and put them all in the same place, it would take up about the space of Los Angeles. All right, so there's plenty of room for people. What we're really discussing is resources. Okay, so this picture kind of sums it up well. There's a crowd of people all gathered around one single resource, this water well. All right, and the crowd is fighting and trying to get to that resource for survival. All right, everybody brought their pails and their containers for that one single resource. So in this picture, water becomes a limiting resource, and you can argue overpopulation is true according to this picture when it comes to water in this part of the world. So keep in mind, we're not talking about space, we're talking about resources. And a lot of times in this class, that's what things are going to come down to. Are there enough resources? So strap yourself in. Okay, hopefully you're you're pumped up, ready to go. All right, you're alert and awake. Okay, maybe you're a little shocked that this is the way we're going to be learning in here. Okay, watching these lectures at home. Okay, maybe you're a little worried that you might miss one of these lectures and not be prepared in the classroom, but I have confidence in you. So get out your notebook and take some time, pause when you have to, take some good notes on these concepts so that you can bring any questions you have into the classroom and we can talk about it there. Maybe you're already asleep at your computer, and if that's the case, press pause, stand up and go get a drink, go get some food, and make sure you're alert. Okay, so moving along here. So like I said, we're not talking about space. Now, it is true that humans gather in cities, all right, and that gives people a better chance of survival, to gather in cities. And cities can become crowded. All right, we look at this picture where everybody's on the train. It's true that within that city, resources become limited, but that's where the jobs are, all right? That's where people have the best survival rate, living in numbers, just like other species out in the environment. Living in numbers increases a species' survival rate. All right, but like I said, we're talking about resources. All right, are there enough resources that we use and rely on to sustain 7+ billion people? And that's the question. So we really have to look inside ourselves and look at our human footprint on the planet and our consumption. And here in the United States, being an affluent country, we tend to overconsume. We use more than what we need. So there's going to be a lot of soul searching in this course and in this unit. And look inside yourself and think about where in your life can you decrease your consumption? Where in your life can you lessen your human footprint, your environmental footprint? Okay, so go ahead and pause the video, all right, and I want you to respond to this journal entry about overpopulation. Thinking about resources on the planet, and then you have to think about which resources. Do you believe that the world is overpopulated? That the Earth has reached what we're going to call the carrying capacity of humans? There's only so many humans that the Earth can handle. And specifically at this time of our history where we're so demanding on the planet. Okay, so do you think that the world has reached this carrying capacity? All right, just respond as short or as long as you want. I'll see you back here in a couple of moments. Okay, welcome back. All right, so let's explore that a little bit. Do you think the world is overpopulated? There's no right or wrong answer. It's a question that we're going to continue to think about throughout this unit. So think about this. During the first minute of your time reading this, an estimated 255 babies are born. During that same minute, an estimated 107 people die. So you can already see that the Earth population is growing. Somewhat upsetting is that almost 6% of the people who died in that minute died of something that's fully preventable, hunger. And, it's a misconception because There is plenty of food grown on this planet that could feed everyone. Hunger should not be a problem. What happens is that it's unequally distributed to wealthy and affluent countries, and poorer countries who have a lot of poverty. That's where the hunger really is taking its toll. Now, we do have hunger in America. Even affluent countries have hunger, but the food on this earth is unequally distributed, and that's going to reign true for many of the resources that we're going to look at throughout this unit in class. Okay, so where are these people? As of July 2010, China and India should stand out to you. Those are the countries where the population is the greatest. Okay, 1.3 billion for China and 1.2 billion in India. USA rounds out, and we're at about 311 million at this point. And then you can read the other countries there. But these are the countries, they're developing countries at this point. But those are the countries that are turning the corner, and more people in those countries are buying cars and traveling and buying homes and buying and having the things that their families never had before. So they're going to put an increased demand on the planet's resources. And there's a lot of people. Okay? The United States is already affluent. We have all those cars already. We have homes that we need to heat and cool. But in these countries, more and more people are going to put those environmental stresses on the planet. So as we move into the future and more people and countries become affluent and turn that corner, can the planet sustain them and their needs? Okay, so that's where we're at. With population, there's a fun fact. If Facebook was a country, it would be the third largest country in the world with over 500 million registered users. Okay, so here's population distribution map, and you see the darker the blue, the more the people, and India and China stand out. And what I want to point out at this map here is that, the United States and Mexico, all right, but here's one country that's coming into the world stage as we speak. Brazil is really starting to explode, and the rainforests are being cut down in Brazil. One of the main reasons is economic development. Their population is growing. Okay, they just finished a road that goes from one side of the continent to the other, and now they're able to, through deforestation, build satellite roads off that road, and towns and communities, and ranches, and agriculture, and now that country is growing rapidly. All right, Nigeria is also a country that has rapid growth to it, and Russia is trying to get itself on the world stage as well. So here's a population map, and you can take a look at it and pause it if you like. Okay, and here's put numbers to things. China and India stand out, and then all the other countries follow suit, and again, just a couple of these countries that are trying to work into the world's marketplace. I like this quote. It's from Jacques Cousteau, an underwater explorer. Overconsumption and overpopulation underlie every environmental problem we face today. I mean, all the pollution, all the stress on the environment, stress on our resources, the mining that it takes to get these materials. Think about copper wires and how many copper wires are in your house. Well, that copper had to be mined, probably in a gigantic open pit mine, which takes all that material out of the earth, the tailings piles and the water needed to processing and mining. And then you need to ship that raw copper to be processed and extract the copper from the ore, from the rock. So you need chemicals for that. And then you need to transport that raw material to be made into copper wires. So the transportation costs and the production costs, and then the transportation costs to get it to the shelf, to you, for use. Okay, so think about all those things. And then think about the oil it takes to make a plastic water bottle. Okay, so we have to drill the oil out of the ground. Think about the energy it takes to do that. And then pump it out of the ground and refine it in a giant refinery. And then make a pre-mold of a plastic bottle. Ship it across the country to a store where you buy that water bottle. And it might take you 15-20 minutes to drink it, and then you dispose of that product. So the oil used had been in the earth for millions and millions of years, and then tremendous amounts of energy went in to produce a water bottle that you used for about 15 minutes. Okay, so think about that. And we're using tremendous amounts of water bottles and other products every day, just like that. Okay, so let's start looking at some concepts. As populations grow, members consume greater amounts of resources. Resources that limit the growth of a population are called limiting resources. So let's take a look at some limiting resources. What resources are going to limit this cat population? The first one you're going to say is food. All right, there's only so much food around, and if there's an individual that doesn't have food, it's going to limit the population. He is not going to survive. Now you can also argue space is a limiting resource, because if there was enough space, this kitty cat could get in here to get the food. So you can argue that space itself is a limiting resource. If you're really creative and observant, you can see that vaccinations and, in this case, medical care may be a limiting resource. All right, those cats that have vaccinations are going to be the ones that survive. Think about that, and think about what are some limiting resources for humans. And obviously food comes to mind, but what are some others? Our way of life depends a lot on the resources we use. So you can argue that limiting resources of our way of life, a big one is oil. And here are just some of the things that we use that are made from oil. Okay, all kinds of things from, our medicines and aspirins to our trash bags to our fertilizers, things that we use to grow food, insect repellents, deodorants, soaps, our paints and our lipstick cosmetic product, all kinds of things that we use on a daily basis are used from oil. Okay, so you might argue that oil is a limiting resource for our way of life. We might not need it to survive, but definitely our way of life. And then there's a fun fact here. The United States goes through 2.5 million plastic bottles every hour, and only 1 of 4 is recycled. Okay, so think about that and what we were talking about with the amount of energy it takes to extract the oil, process it, transport it, and our use of that product is about 15 minutes. Okay, so we're going to be talking about this as we move forward into non-renewable mineral resources, but here's just a quick preview of all these, a couple of the resources that are running low on the planet and that we're going to have to make some decisions as we move forward. These are the things that we need to conserve. Okay, so you can pause this and take a look at it if you want. The year there is the year that it's predicted to run out. All right, this is a very pessimistic poster. I don't know if I believe exactly these dates of these products, but it was created and it's produced to kind of put a seed in your mind that we need to conserve, or the future generations are not going to have the things that we have today. And that's what it means to be sustainable. We need to make decisions now so that future generations have the products, have the resources, have the things that we have today, so that they can live convenient and full lives as well. Okay, so this unit on population is going to be all about demographics. All right, you might have had this in some other honors or AP course, so this should be a review for you, for those of you who had those courses. But if you didn't, demographics is literally the study of the size, composition, and distribution of human populations and the consequences of changes in those characteristics. All right, so we're going to be talking a lot about economic growth and how humans, the distribution of humans around the planet, and in regard to their culture and religious beliefs and population sizes actually impact the environment. So the first major concept is called carrying capacity. We mentioned that already, and this is pretty simple, but we'll go through real quick. Okay, so let's say here we have a graph, and let's go ahead and cross out millions and say that this ecosystem is a pond. And there are a certain number of frogs that the pond can hold. There's a number, the carrying capacity of frogs that the pond can hold. So what's going to happen is frogs are going to be born. Okay, frogs multiply very quickly. And at some point there is some number of frogs that the pond can handle. In nature, what's going to happen is there's going to be too many frogs born. And a limiting resource is going to cause, or the lack of a limiting resource is going to cause what's called a die-off or a dieback. Okay? So what would be a limiting resource for a pond? It could be insects, food. So in nature, you'll have what's called an overshoot and then a dieback. All right, and then you'll have another overshoot because there's more food, and then there's not enough food. So in nature, you'll have this fluctuation. Nevertheless, there's some number out there of frogs that the pond can handle, and that's called the carrying capacity of that environment. So in dealing with humans, we're asking, did the Earth itself reach its carrying capacity? We don't know, because we don't know what that number is. keep that in mind as we move forward here. Okay, here's a case study in an overshoot and a dieback of a species. The case study is the reindeer of St. Paul's Island, Alaska. In St. Paul's Island, and you can see in the top left there, a little tiny island off the coast of Alaska, the caribou population was decimated, and the management wanted to replace the caribou with reindeer. Okay, reindeer eat lichen. Okay, lichen grows very slowly and happens to grow over the winter time, right when reindeer are trying to fatten up to make it through the winter. You can imagine how cold the Alaskan winters are, especially on an island. Okay, so what happened was they brought in 11 reindeer in 1910, and the population exploded, almost to about 2,000 reindeer, in which case was an overshoot. Somewhere in here, somewhere is the carrying capacity of the island, based on the limiting resource, the lichen, and there was too many reindeer and not enough food. So the reindeer died off. And the population actually died off, and let me minimize this little window. You can see that it almost died off to extinction. There was about 8 left in 1950. Management came in and made sure that there was enough food for the population, restabilized it, and today it's at about 500. We're back up to about 500 reindeer on St. Paul Island. But what this does is it provides us a nice case study in a limiting resource, but an overshoot of the carrying capacity, and we get to see an overshoot and a dieback. All right, what are we talking about when we talk about population? We're talking about, very simply, the number of births, and you have to account for the number of people coming into your country. Okay, so births plus immigrants. And then we compare that to the number of deaths and the number of people leaving that country. All right, so that's a comparison, and that gives us our population. All right, so if you think about the United States, are there a lot of people being born here? All right, we have a steady birth rate. Okay, we have good medicine, high success rate when it comes to births. Are people wanting to come here? This is the land of opportunity. So a lot of immigrants are coming to this country, and that's hot in the news right now about our immigration policy. Do people die here? If they didn't, we'd have a big problem. Are people wanting to leave the United States? Not really. Okay, so what we have here is growth. And the United States is a growing populace, but that's how we do it. We compare births plus immigrants compared to deaths plus immigrants. And the little chart I have down at the bottom is the Native American population. Okay, so some point before settlement, there was a number of Native Americans, and then once settlement came, Europeans came over in boats, immediately the population of Native Americans began to decrease. Okay, all the way into the late 1800s, when smallpox was being spread through the trade of blankets and such, we really did try and eradicate the Native Americans from North America. But through the development of designated areas, reservations and such, the Native American population did bounce back. All right, it's nowhere near where it used to be, which is a huge discussion for another day. But nevertheless, we see the effects of one race in this case. We can track the population of the Native Americans and understand the change of it in that graph below. Okay, take a look at this graph here, world population growth through history. Okay, what we have is a human population about 5 million years ago. Whoops, let me go back. We have a population about 5 million years ago. A certain amount of humans were around. All right, and that population, luckily for us, did not go extinct. Okay, it maintained itself. All right, in here, humans learned how to build shelter. Okay, they discovered things like fire and tools, which allowed the population to steadily increase. Somewhere around 12,000 years ago, agriculture came into play. All right, agriculture was discovered, and now irrigation, domestication of animals, the cultivation of wheat and corn and grasses, things like that allow the population to steadily grow. So agriculture was a huge innovation that allowed not only the survival of humans, but the growth of the population. All right, which continued all the way till about 500 years ago, when what happened? We're going to call exponential growth. Something happened in here to allow human population to really take off. All right, think about what happened then. If you said the scientific and Industrial Revolution. You are correct. All right, that really allowed the population to explode. So what does that mean? That means the knowledge of diseases increased. All right, increased medical care, increased sanitary conditions, the use of fossil fuels for heat. The death rate really dropped, allowing the human population to explode. Okay, which continued all the way up through the development of things like antibiotics, all right, surgeries, things that really allowed the human life expectancy to increase. Okay, machines. It supported a larger population and actually increased the amount of convenience. Okay, so where are we going? We're continuing on this path of upward population growth. Where do we go from here? You can read that if you like. I'm going to move forward. The future. By 2045, global population is projected to reach 9 billion. Okay, again, can the planet take that with current demand of resources? And here's where we're at. I like this little paragraph. You can pause and read it if you like. I'll go through the highlights here. If the billions of people who are currently in poor countries want to boost themselves out of poverty, and they follow the path blazed by us, they too will step hard on the planet's resources. Okay, do we have enough resources? Okay, think about it. That's where we're at. It's those 1.3 and 1.2 billion people in China and India and growing countries that are going to make that next step in the next couple of decades, that are really going to put a strain on our environment and our Earth. All right, so we're going to do some activities in class looking at exponential growth, but we've already started to dabble in it with the world population chart, okay, where the population exploded. Exponential growth is where a large number of individuals are added to the population with each generation, and what you should know is that it's deceptive. Okay, take a look at my little bunnies rabbits. Population starts off growing slowly at first, but very quickly within a few generations, there's overpopulace. All right, starts out slowly, but population can explode. All right, we call that exponential growth. So let's take a look at what it looks like if we chart and graph exponential growth. Exponential growth on a graph starts out slowly, is deceptive at first, but only in a few generations, population explodes. All right, we're going to call that the J curve. All right, the world population currently is represented by a J curve. If we take a look at the United States population, all right, United States population started off quickly. We had an explosion of population, and recently our population has leveled off. In nature, with plants and animals inside of any ecosystem, like our frogs at our pond, that leveling off is going to occur at the carrying capacity, at or near the carrying capacity. And that depends everything about the available resources. All right, but if we look at countries' growth, all right, which we will do in a mock simulation, some countries out there like Nigeria, all right, and India are experiencing exponential growth, whereas developed countries can be represented by the S curve, all right, a more stable population growth after an initial exponential growth. In talking about all this, in talking about population and growth, we have to mention the biotic potential. And this is also something that will carry over, as will most of these concepts, into our biodiversity and plants and animals unit. All right, so let's compare the biotic potential, and very self-explanatory, the potential of an organism to reproduce. So if you look at humans, how much can a human reproduce? Okay, we have one baby every 9 months. All right, so that's our biotic potential. There's a little period of time where the woman's body must recover, and then again, it'll take 9 months to have another child. So the human reproductive ages can be anywhere from 14 to about 44 on average. So you can do a quick calculation of the true maximum amount of offspring any one human can reproduce. But now let's compare that to some other species. So if we compare that to rats, for example, a litter of rats can be anywhere between 6 and 24. So let's look at the maximum potential any litter of rats can have. So rats can give birth 24 babies. Let's say they all survive and all those 24 reproduce. You can see that rats have a greater biotic potential than humans. All right, then think about bacteria. Their population doubles very quickly. It could be within an hour. It can be within a few minutes. When we talk about biotic potential, we're referring to the maximum growth rate if every individual survived and then reproduced at maximum capacity. All right, so let's look at polar bears have one baby every decade, okay, which is one reason why their population is decreasing. Elephants have one baby about every decade as well. So these are two species who are examples of low biotic potential. All right, if you notice, species with low biotic potential tend to really care about their offspring. They have familial structures. All right, they have caring and loving attitudes towards their offspring. Whereas rats, to each their own. The survival of the fittest. Taking a look at the housefly, biotic potential of the housefly is huge. All right, very quickly, if every fly survived and then reproduced at maximum rate, we would quickly be overrun with flies. But you could think about the population of houseflies, and then another example would be the starfish. So if you took 100 starfish and allowed them to reproduce at their true biotic potential very quickly, within 15 generations, there would be more starfish than number of electrons in the universe, and that's a lot. So luckily, this really doesn't happen in nature. Okay, there's those limiting resources that hold back the population from reaching its biotic potential, but it can occur. Okay, the biotic potential can occur when you have something like an invasive species, or when something is introduced into what's called an open ecological niche. So something else died off and something else took its place, and now there's no predators, there's no limiting resources, and the true biotic potential can occur. All right, so a case study would be the zebra mussel. Okay, the zebra mussel was brought into the Great Lakes region in the late 1980s. All right, it was brought in for food, and to cultivate for restaurants and things like that. And very quickly, since there was no predators and it had an open niche, it took over the whole Mississippi River Valley, and including up into Canada, very quickly. Okay, only in 12 years. All right, is what that map is showing you. And you can see here it took over this shopping cart here. A very quick growing species, and there's a big problem with zebra mussel inside of hydroelectric dams. Okay, there's these pipes that go at the bottom of the dam that feeds the water to the dam where the turbines are to turn the turbine to generate electricity. Well, the zebra mussels were growing inside those pipes, clogging the pipes, which endangers the machinery. Okay, so you have to have a scuba diver come down here and continuously clean out the zebra mussels. It's just a logistical problem. So the zebra mussels are a good case study of a species that reached its biotic potential because it was introduced into an area where there was no limiting resource. Okay, so what are some of those limiting resources? In aquatic environments, it could be oxygen, underwater oxygen supply, which is the reason why you can't only have 1 or 2 goldfish per 10 gallons of water. Right, those goldfish need a certain amount of oxygen. All right, food obviously is a limiting resource, disease, predators, and space in these examples. So those are some of the limiting resources that can limit population growth and keep a population at or near its carrying capacity. Okay, another example in a plant kingdom is something called Pachysandra, low-growing ground cover, grows about 6 inches off the ground. All right, so what Pachysandra does, in order to survive, it covers the ground, and it actually limits the amount of sunlight that gets to the surface. So no weeds or saplings will grow from the ground surface where the Pachysandra is growing. So landscapers like this, you might even have this in your yard. I do. It's a beautiful plant. Okay, but what it does is it keeps down the weeds. So landscapers will use this and plant it in flower beds where you want low maintenance. You don't want to be weeding a lot. Okay, because what it does is it limits the resource. It limits the sunlight getting to the ground, so nothing else grows. All right, it also has a nice little purple flower. So the Pachysandra is a ground cover. That's an example of something that limits the resources below it. Here are bats. Okay, here's another population that lives in numbers. So let's talk about the cave as being an environment or an ecosystem, and The limiting resources within the cave might be space. It might be, what else? Food. Okay, the number of insects might limit the population of these bats. If there was unlimited space and unlimited food, this cave would fill with bats. Okay, until some other limiting resource would come in, maybe a predator. All right, here's an example of bugs that they are obviously overpopulated at this building. Okay, nothing is limiting its population. The carrying capacity of this environment is great. There must be a lot of food around. But what can become a limiting resource? We're going to need a predator. Okay, so we're going to need the birds to come in and limit this population. Okay, so but how is the bird going to realize the bugs are there? In this case, crowding. All right, crowding attracts predators. All right, you can see the little bug here is what that one's flying close to the camera. All right, but crowding can also increase exposure to parasites and diseases. Okay, so our case study with a disease that's affecting a population due to crowding is the white nose syndrome. It's affecting North American bats. Okay, you see the little white nose there. Okay, the white nose syndrome is something to be concerned about. Okay, you may not want bats in your bedroom or in your house. You might not want to hold one or pet one. Okay, but bats are very important for ecosystems. If you take the bats away, white nose syndrome is affecting over 5 million bats. Once a bat gets it, there's a 95% mortality rate. It's going to die. All right, 9 species of bats have been affected. What impact can this have? What impact can this have? What do bats do? Think about it. They eat bugs. Okay, they eat mosquitoes. And mosquitoes spread diseases like West Nile. Okay, so if the bat population decreases, which it is due to white nose syndrome, the mosquito population is going to increase. You're going to have a cause and effect relationship here. And you're going to see more cases of mosquito spreading diseases like West Nile and some others. Okay, so we have to really be careful and keep a close eye on what's going on in our environment, in these ecosystems. You might not like bats, but believe it or not, we need them. Okay, so just to kind of wrap it up here, think about the key concepts that we talked about. We went over a lot of content, a lot of concepts, but really a big one is when we're talking about overpopulation of humans, in fact, we're not talking about space, we're talking about resources. And think about that as we move forward, especially into our waste unit, we'll really be able to see the resources that you use and consume on a daily, weekly, yearly basis. Okay, and resources are consumed all the time. When you turn lights on, you're consuming fuel that it took to turn a turbine somewhere and make that electricity. So if you turn your lights off, you're consuming less resources. Okay, if you carpool, you're consuming less resources. All right, when you take a paper towel in the bathroom, take 1 instead of 3. Think about your own human footprint and how you can lessen your impact on the environment. So nice work listening to this. I know these are long and I know they might be boring at times, but what's good is you can pause them, come back to them. We went through a lot of things. This course is going to be jam-packed with information and terms and concepts and ideas, but it's all geared to make you think about you and your impact on the environment and our Earth. And I hope that you're gaining an appreciation already for some of these concepts and for some of these ideas. And hopefully you can come to class now with good discussion. Okay, so thank you for listening, and I'll see you at part 2 next time.